If I throw your car keys in the shark tank, are you going to jump in there after them, right? Probably not. What if I threw one of your kids? You're starting to protect that life.
Coming into the Christmas month, thinking about security when it comes to my family, but also my packages.
It starts with the mindset, situational awareness. Look at shady people, what belongs, what doesn't belong.
Bad actors always attack soft targets. They look for the weak. So don't be an easy threat. What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to a Time to Head North podcast, brought to you by the North Group, security refined by intelligence. You guys need anything in the personal security, business security, corporate security, whatever your needs might be, please go reach out to the North Group. Go hit them up at any time. Right. My next guest, my boy, is Johnny JC. Say your last name, Koba.
Covarrubias. I know it's a mouthful.
Covarrubias.
Hey, got to roll the
I'm
Mars.
not ethnic enough to. My mom would be embarrassed that I couldn't do that.
Right.
Well, welcome to the podcast, brother. This is a podcast that is focused on security, personal safety, a lot of in that genre. And, you know, we're coming into the Christmas month, December, and there's a lot of thought on my mind about keeping my family safe as well as my stuff safe. You know, so thinking about security when it comes to my family, but also my packages that arrive at my freaking from Amazon. So just have a lot of questions and would love to hear from your experience. What are some of the things you do to keep your family safe and keep your stuff safe that you purchase during the Christmas holiday? If you don't mind, for the audience, can you give a little bit of background and bio of your experience and training?
Yep. Hey, Vince, thanks for having me, man. Just a little bit about myself. I spent 4 years active duty Marine Corps when the war kicked off. I did another 3 years in the reserve. And then I finally decided to transition into law enforcement. So I became a police officer for about 6 years. Obviously, I'm from California, but I had to move to the state of New Mexico with the agency where I worked for. Did that for 6 years, spent some time, patrol, and, got on the SWAT team, did a bunch of training there with the SWAT team. And then I then went to a couple of courses, hostage negotiations, crisis intervention, and stuff like that, because we're seeing a spike in mental health illness at that time. And I started in 2013. So the ask, tell, make, concept back in the day, was no longer ask, tell, make. We were having to ask, and try to de-escalate situations, right? But after that, I decided to move on and join the private sector and started contracting overseas doing diplomatic protection. I was tasked out to the embassy in Kabul, Afghanistan. After that, I transitioned to becoming a high threat protection instructor at the schoolhouse in Virginia for Department of State Security Services. And then in between rotations, I worked at a school as a armed security for a charter school. So that was another insight of experience of how to deal with people. And then I became an instructor for diplomatic security contractors. So up until this point, I've been doing some executive protection and teaching.
I love all the background. You have all the experience that anyone could ask for in the security space. What are some things that you, as let's just say we're shopping, we're at the mall shopping. What are some things you think about in a security posture or to protect your family in those kind of environments? Christmas is the season where the malls are packed, right? And there's also bigger threats, in my opinion. And so very curious to see where your mind is and how you can help other people be prepared for kind of the unknowns.
Man, I think first and foremost, like you said, where my mind is, I think mindset is a huge aspect of security, right? A lot of us, the majority of the population, like you have experienced law enforcement, military, our minds are kind of switched on, right? To be in that yellow, right, in the color code, not necessarily be in the white and, sucked into your phone, not paying attention to your surroundings. I think the majority of the population has this concept of, I don't know, like they live in this bubble, right? That somebody's going to protect them some way, somehow, right? But I think it's up to us to take on and be proactive. And again, it's the mindset, right? To not be in denial. I think a lot of people. I also teach concealed carry courses, and I talk a lot about this to the general population that yeah, you can take all the classes, but if your mindset is not there, right, and you're in denial, pretending that it'll never happen to you, or it'll never be here, or nothing will ever bad will ever happen here, that's kind of, you're already defeating yourself, right? So when it does happen, now you're kind of stuck behind the power curve, essentially, right? And I mean, we talk about the OODA
Yeah.
loop and all that stuff, and that's a topic for another conversation. But essentially, I think it starts with the mindset, right? And then we get into this cliche. Um, Situational awareness, right? What is it? Like a lot of people, situational awareness. But again, and I tell my wife a lot of this. She goes shopping. We have kids, right? Like, hey, you need to pay attention to surroundings. Look at shady people. What belongs, what doesn't belong, right? Like establishing a baseline in your environment, essentially, right? And these are things we learn as law enforcement. Like, trying to drill it to my wife and stuff. So, situational awareness, not being sucked into your phone and distracted, essentially, right? And then just, again, understanding where you're at and the environment, essentially, is going to help you, have a better understanding, knowing where your exits and entry points are, right? If something bad does go happen, where you're at Wally World or whatever it is, man, you know how to exit, right? So, so these are the things that
Yeah.
I try to I'll not dumb it down, but kind of like explain it Barney style, in terms where it's understandable and consumable for the regular person, right? That doesn't really practice situation awareness or law enforcement or any of those tactics and techniques.
Yeah, man. So how does your wife handle that? Like, is she locked on? Does she kind of pay attention, or is she just, like, no, that's your job. I'm just the wife. I'm going to go shopping.
Man, so and it's crazy that you mentioned that, right? The last time I came from overseas, and she's like, "Man, now I can finally relax and let you take care of that, right? Because that's your wheelhouse." But no, over time, even we got married. I was on my last deployment in Afghanistan, Marine Corps. She kind of understood a little bit, didn't really pay attention, but it wasn't until I became a law enforcement officer where we really started. She's like, "Why are you sitting in the back and facing, the door all the time? You're back to the, you know what I mean?" She started picking up on these subtle cues that were instilled in me during the police academy and from my FTOs and stuff like that. So I started explaining these concepts, right? But it wasn't until we had our child where it really started to matter, right? And become important. Like, why are we doing that? Why do we have to look? Well, I worked in a smaller town, and um, I had arrested a dude, and he recognized me. I was in my court attire, right? And the nice slacks and stuff, and my pistol, my badge. And this dude comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, I remember you," right? So it's like, my family wasn't with me at the time, but this is the story that I told my wife. I was like, "Hey, this happened to me at Home Depot today." Um, so you have to really switch your brain, right, to be situationally aware. Because I might, again, we don't have, I wish I had eyes in the back of my head, but I don't, right? But you're going to be my eyes as well. So we kind of start sharing those concepts and ideas. And man, again, I started working overseas, and hey, this is your show now, right? Like, you're going to have to pay attention to what's going on because I'm no longer here, right? I'm not expecting you to go fight anybody, but um, understand your environment. And if you see something that looks shady, that doesn't look inviting, man, go away. You can always come back, right?
It's interesting. Like, I don't know if my wife thinks about it, but my son now does, right? I have a 6-year-old son. He's pretty aware of the
Mhm.
surroundings. And I think my 16-year-old daughter's pretty good about it too. Like the other day we were leaving a gas station. She goes, "That guy's weird." And I was like, "What do you mean weird?" She goes, "That guy over there with a sling on his arm, he's weird." I'm like, "What makes you say that?" Right. And she was just
Right.
picking up these indicators of him staring at my wife while she goes to the bathroom and different things like that. And she was like, "Yeah," and she called him weird, right? She didn't say it was a threat.
Mhm.
She didn't say, her terminology is just weird. But I love that, and the fact that she had an instinct to see that
Right.
someone was acting a kind of way that might have made her feel uncomfortable. She identified that and termed it as weird. But I mean, for me now, that goes like, "Oh no, that's a potential threat," right? And so
Mhm.
it was really cool to see my kids are kind of locked on like that. I think my wife is still kind of just like allows me to do everything. But I hope that when she's out shopping by herself, she's thinking of these things. She's paying attention
Yes.
to some of the probably the strange kind of people that are maybe might be following her or just kind of observing her from a distance, to also know when to shop. Like my big thoughts for her is like, look, shop during the day, not at night, because my fear is always them
Mhm.
walking to their car. So that's a
Yes.
thought of mine all the time. Walk in your car. Um, what is there some things that you could probably tell the audience, maybe some of the wives that are listening right now, some other things they might want to either carry with them or things they can do to kind of protect themselves while shopping for their families for this Christmas season?
Obviously caring, right? Understanding the liability aspect of it too, right? But man, if you have the ability and the time, nowadays in society we're kind of constrained by time, right? We're in this like mouse wheel, hamster wheel, right? That we're running with bills, work, kids, practices, and stuff. And hardly do we find time to get out there and train, exercise, shoot, whatever it might be. So, man, if you have the ability, even something as small as man watching YouTube, right? Like there's a lot of podcasts out there of people talking about situational awareness, those like you said, those key indicators, right? Man, this doesn't look right, doesn't feel right, right? You got the hairs in the back of your neck standing up, right? And then it's a clue, right? So I tell the students and my kids still like, hey, remember Blue's Clues, right? Hey, a clue, right? So it's understanding those clues and cues that, hey, maybe I shouldn't be here and I can probably come back to Walmart later or tomorrow or something like that, right? If it's not an emergency. But yeah, start, looking at some of these YouTube videos. If time permits, right? Obviously, moving on to like self defense courses and stuff like that, and then obviously concealed carry and
Yeah,
understand the training. So it's kind of like a
absolutely.
military law enforcement crawl, walk, run method, right? You can't just go from 0 to 100 and expect to be fully dialed in. You have to start baby steps.
Yeah, and you don't. I also don't want my wife going out there like freaking in a ninja suit, hoping to find someone to fight. You know what I mean? There's a balance to it all.
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
I would say like there's you know, I for the audience, like just what comes to mind right now is like if I'm thinking what are some areas that I would be fearful if my wife was to be out there shopping would be that her hands are full. If she has too many bags in her hands, then she doesn't have the ability to defend herself. And so if there's an ability to have a shopping cart instead, you could always disengage with the shopping cart and still be able to defend yourself or be able to run.
Right.
Items
Mhm.
that you purchased are not worth your life. So then you can actually just kind of drop those and get out of the way. I think when people are holding things, the initial instinct is continue to hold them out of fear. And so you might not be able to defend yourself in a way that would be appropriate in any kind of manner. And as well as, look, if someone's going to try and rob you and, let them. There's nothing worth your life. You know what I mean? Like I don't
Yeah.
want anyone. Like if I'm there, I'm probably going to fight. That's probably not the
Yeah.
best idea in the world. But
Yeah.
you know, you got to think about if it was me and my wife and we were surrounded by 5 guys, 6 guys, I'm gonna allow them to take whatever they need to just to make sure that we live to fight another day, right? And so
Yeah.
you have to make these really conscious decisions on what's going to be the smartest approach here that you can continue to celebrate the holidays with your family. And so just be very mindful and thoughtful with like if you're going out to shop at night, make sure you have someone with you so you can walk to your car. Make sure that wherever you park your car is well lit, so that is a
Mhm.
deterrence in itself for these
100%.
nefarious actors. But as well as try and bring your husband with you or bring a friend with you. I think we're powerful in numbers, and
Mhm.
that is a statement. I always have my son go with my wife if she wants to go do something. Like, hey, go with mom. Things like that is just like you're powerful in numbers, and it makes it a little bit more of a intimidation kind of factor. I always say that
Mhm.
these bad actors always attack soft targets. They look for the weak. They look for the soft targets,
Mhm.
people that are easy threats. And so don't be an
Right.
easy threat, meaning don't be alone. Don't
Mhm.
be, and if you're alone, then make smart decisions by using light as a form of your defense. By
Deterrence.
bright outside,
Mhm.
people usually want to attack or rob or anything during broad daylight. So, right?
Right. Yeah, 100%. And we think about the 3 Ds, right? Deter, deny, defend, right? So if you can think of in that concept, right? Deterrence, lights, and stuff like that, right? And yeah, 100%. Like I tell my son, hey, go with your mom. he's the extra little set of eyes, right? That and yeah,
Yeah.
nothing's worth your life. Like one of my good instructors, from police time, he kind of painted this picture, the Shark Tank analogy, right? Like if I throw your car keys in the Shark Tank, are you going to jump in there after him, right? Well, probably not, right? What about your wallet? Yeah, I wouldn't jump in the Shark Tank, taking my wallet. What if I threw one of your kids or siblings or somebody? Yeah, then you're starting to protect that life, right? So that's kind of the analogy that I use quite a
Oh, I
bit
love
with.
that.
Yep. But yeah, man,
That's
it's
a
again,
great
it's a
analogy.
crazy world. It's a crazy world, and I think like everybody says, take it serious and switch on your brain. So essentially, that mindset, right?
Yeah. How about some security at your own home? We're ordering packages these days, right? And like,
Hmm.
luckily, I have one of those camera doorbells, right? So that really helps with maybe someone trying to steal my stuff. But
Right.
do you have any kind of things you do to keep your house safe? Guard dogs, whatnot. I'm just curious what you do.
Man, so yeah, there's obviously the floodlights, right? Motion sensors, motion lights. If it's completely like, and we think about this, like you said, a soft target, right? These people, these bad actors are, they crime of opportunity. It's called, right? If I can do it, and I'm going to do it, right? And if you allow that opportunity for them, so again, if they're really bad people, right, then they're going to do really really bad. But essentially, I think motion sensors are a good idea, right? I had my garage, the doorbell, and then the front entrance. Um, and I tell my family same thing. I don't have any dogs. I had a bulldog for a pet. He wasn't going to be a guard dog, but yeah, I dogs are a good idea because they're early warning essentially, right? When they start barking, they start sensing somebody outside. And man, at the end of the day, like you said, if somebody's going out there stealing your stuff, is it worth me going out there and try to fight somebody, possibly get injured, possibly injure somebody, and then the whole snowball effect of, man, do I really want this? Is it worth it? Right? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Right?
Yeah.
All we can do essentially is secure, right, our perimeter, make sure our doors are locked, right, make sure this. I have little kids, man, and they hear the doorbell and like they run to the door. I was like, no, you guys can't be running to the door. That's another aspect that I implement in my house. Like you
Yeah.
guys did get away from the door. We're looking at cameras first, and then we figure out who's out there, right? Because you never know. You see all these. Watch all these
Yep.
videos, man. People
That's
are
the
just
same.
breaking. Yeah, it's Amazon people, right? Vests or whatever. Oh,
Yeah.
delivery, and then boom, they're breaking into your home. So that's these are all preventative measures that you can take.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, I don't let my wife do any kind of Facebook marketplace when I'm not home because you don't
Yeah,
know these people. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
I don't allow any kind of thing like that. Like I answer the door as much as possible. If for some
Mhm.
reason I'm on a call, then I can't, but I still kind of pay attention to what's going on. We do have a camera that shows us who's outside of our home before entering. I also close the windows to the sides of the door so they can't look in and kind of make a determination of what I have going on my side. Right. So I think
Right,
of all that crazy stuff. And I'm also one of those
100%.
guys that at night, I lock the back door, I lock the garage door, I lock the front door, but then I'm also looking at it and make sure it's locked. Like I double check everything because my mind is always like, man, the most uncomfortable thought is someone coming into your house at night when you're sleeping. So, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
I always have access to a gun that's close enough as well within reach for that because like the
Mhm.
the oh shit, here we go kind of
Right.
situation. But that's like
Yeah.
my biggest fear is like make sure the alarms are on, the doors are locked before I go to sleep because like I'm always compromised in that bed when I'm like cuddling with my wife, just sleeping. So
Right.
I'm nervous
Yeah.
as all hell. So
I ain't
that's my
gonna get
my
woken up,
biggest
man.
my biggest yeah. Yeah. No, well, yeah, that's my biggest pressure test. I'm nervous about, the vulnerability of sleeping. It's like that's
Yeah.
always an uncomfortable one.
Yeah, for sure, man. And you said it.
Well,
You
dude,
hit the nail on the head. Vulnerability, right? And that is essentially what drives our mind to be proactive about our security and protection.
yeah, man. And early on, you talked about training. How often are you able to get training in, and also as well as not just training for yourself, but are you able to kind of start implementing training to your family at all?
You know, yeah, we so even something as small as talking through scenarios, right? Remember, I forget where I got this from, but the mind won't go where or the body won't go where the mind hasn't been. Right? It's a training thing where, man, even talking about scenarios, right? Just, visualizing, that in itself is training, man. I'm driving down the road and be like, hey, Jace, you got my back, right, dude? You're my window licker in the rear, right? Looking, you got my my six, right? So these, just even talking about it, can kind of um, prime the mind essentially, right? And I take my son sometimes to the shooting range and stuff. Obviously, we have little kids, so I can't, haul the whole family at once. But again, talking through scenarios is a good viable way to just
Bro,
again prime the
I would
mind.
love to get yeah, man, I would love to get my sons out there with your son. You're an incredible instructor. And I
Thank you.
saw some of the shooting stuff training you've done with your son, and man, he looks like I've seen professionals don't look as clean as he looks when he's shooting, dude. So it's like I was quite impressed to see him be able to pull his pistol out of his holster, to be able to engage on the target, be able to change mags with a pistol and a rifle, and do them all with clean precision and as well as safety. Like that was very impressive. Your son is what, 13 years old, somewhere around that age. Like for
Yep.
him to be able to manage the pistol as well as he was and the rifle, I mean that shows how much training you've been able to implement on him. But very impressive, and I find that to be like, like I wish I was doing that with my kid. I didn't, I was so busy my whole life not thinking
Yeah.
to train with my own sons and daughters. But I would love to maybe host a class here locally for the families to be able to do the same, because I have seen the videos that you posted, and it was just incredible to watch, man. How long has he been training?
Man, I'll tell you, probably the first time I ever exposed him to a firearm was probably when he was about 3, right? So he started growing up. I was a police officer, SWAT call outs and stuff. And his main focus was the poom poom. That was what he called it, right? When he was a little tiny, you know. Um, and the stimulus for him the was the poom poom. I was like, man, what can I do to, so it was that curiosity, right? How can I satisfy his curiosity? So we started with Nerf guns, right? Like, hey, it's safety, and we don't point it. And talking to a 3-year-old, right? How
Yeah.
how much Barney style can you get, down to their level so they can understand. Obviously, you can't use these intellectual big word, you know what I mean? So it's, man, you're just talking to a kid, right? So but yeah, that first exposure was around 3 years old, and he understood, and I made sure that he had the respect for my tool, right? And that was daddy's tool. Like, hey, you go swing a hammer, that's your tool, right? So this is my tool. This is what I use to go to work, right? Obviously, having it in a place where it's out of reach for him. So over time, because he drew a really very fine focus to it, right? So I thought I had to get, start teaching them and safety and stuff. So in between rotations, once I left the department, I had some time, so we would, I would do scenarios, right? I'd cut up little cardboard and silhouettes and stuff, and do, scenarios around the house and teach them safety. So it all started with Nerf guns, man. So um, and then to the
It's
point
crazy.
where, okay, he's old enough to hold a firearm, and a little 22, right? Nothing crazy where it's gonna kind of divert his attention, or essentially keep him away from firearms. Where I didn't want to scare him off, right, with bigger calibers. So
Yeah.
22.
I did that
So
with
that's
my
kind of
wife.
what started.
I scared her
Yeah.
before, and now she's terrified.
Yep. That's the other
Yeah,
aspect. We
I
talk
was
about.
saying I did it with my wife.
Yep. So I taught, and this is the other
Yeah.
the other thing I talk about in these concealed carry classes. Um, a lot of us husbands, we push hard, hard, hard. Hey, here, this is what you need to shoot, right? This is my elephant gun. It's going to take down everything, right? But man, you can scare them off, right? So, yeah, understanding these concepts and what you're really pushing, right? And, letting people learn on their own, essentially, because you become so pushy sometimes they don't even want to touch it or talk about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I scared my wife. She was shooting in just a 9mm, but like from 0 to 100, bro. And it
Right.
absolutely terrified her and made her feel like very nervous about guns. And so I haven't been able to take her shooting with me and really train with her in
Mhm.
years, because she's still like, no, I'm not interested anymore. So I don't want to do that to my kids.
Yeah. No, so one of the things I understood as well is that sometimes as couples, right, we tend to like, hey, why are you picking on me? Back and forth banter, marital stuff. But I had my wife take a class from another instructor. She got her concealed carry and understood those concepts. Like, all right, well, you're not really talking down to me or whatever. I was like, that's just how I speak or instruct, right? But again, uh, having somebody from the outside, you know, explain those things, right? Just kind of like the kids with coaching. I can tell them 1,000 times.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So, and the coach says it once, like, hey,
Yeah.
dad, check this out. Like, cool, man. I've been telling you this for 500, days or whatever in a row.
Yeah, I've been fucking telling you this for weeks, and you're just not listening. Sorry about the F word.
Yeah, man.
I have to bleep that out. My bad.
Yeah.
Well, dude, I really appreciate it, man. I really appreciate your insight and your expertise in this security conversation. I've seen the way you move and walk with your family. I've seen how you could conceal carry, and you're just like the epitome of like a man who's ready and prepared at any moment to protect his family. And I highly respect that about you, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to just help us educate our listeners on some of the things to think about during the holidays. And just thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Those of you listening, thank you so much for spending time. And hopefully we've answered any questions. If you guys have any more questions about how you can keep safe during the holidays, please put them in the comments or email us however you need to. I'm not sure what my email is at the moment for TNG, but if you guys have any questions, please let us know. We're going to talk about some online scams that are happening during the holidays here soon with my boy Rocco, and we'll get deeper into this conversation so you guys can be prepared during the holidays with your families and actually enjoy it. So thank you so much for listening to Time to Head North podcast, brought to you by the North Group, security refined by intelligence. Have a good day.